Okay, so wanted to get started today. Hoping a couple more people logged in.
Hi, Tracy and Elaine. I'm seeing all kinds of groups. This is Jenny, Washington. Jill, I'm so excited for you guys to be on. Thank you. And Dorian.
Dorian's your presenter.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead and get ready to get started here then, and we'll be recording this so that we can share this out as well.
We're unmuted. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll open up the meeting today. And Dorian, are you, let me make sure you can be unmuted. This is the first time we've had guest presenters, so I want to thank everybody for having a little bit of patience while we maintain with that and participate. Dorian, I'm unmuting you. Go ahead and say hi.
Hey, how are you?
Just fine, thank you. Welcome to Passageways Offshore.
Well, thank you.
Jenny's worked with you, so I'll let her go ahead and introduce you.
Okay, so actually before we do that, what is someone else controlling them?
No, nobody else is controlling the mouse. I don't think so.
Okay, I'm not sure, just having a little bit of trouble here with either our mouse sensitivity or I'm not sure what's going on. You can X out of that because I'm... All right, so today is our February webinar hosted here by your customer success team with Passageways. And on the screen here, just wanted to take a minute to introduce ourselves. And we've got a couple of slides here because we're going to take an opportunity towards the end of the session to actually share and introduce you to some new folks. But the main group here helping you out would be myself. So I'm Jenny Washington. I'm an implementation manager for all of our new onboard groups. And then we recently had Gina, who's also listed here down to the right. And she's also an implementation manager. And then we have Jessie Blunt, who's working with groups like education and healthcare and some of our nonprofit and co-op groups and others. And then Brian, who's working with banks. And then we're both happy and sad to share that Ryan Strong, who's also been a part of the customer success team, is actually going to be moving into a new role as tech support. So he'll be serving our customers still just in a little bit of a different role. So that's a little bit about the group here that's hosting the session today. And we'd like to just tell you a little bit about the plan for the session. So we've got two different guest speakers, both customers of OnBoard, who have graciously agreed to share a little bit about themselves, their use of OnBoard, and some specific successes. And so first up, I'm going to be introducing Dorian. So let me take back over here if I can.
Mm-hmm. Dorian should be live.
Okay. So hopefully you're all seeing, I've got a few slides prepared for this conversation with Dorian. I'm gonna get rid of our agenda here so you can see this in full screen. So Dorian Retrobinsky is with Saskatchewan Teachers Federation, located in the Saskatchewan province of Canada. And so we're really happy and excited to have him with us today. So just a little bit about Dorian, and then I'll would love to have him interject here a little bit more. So fun fact about Dorian, now he's a corporate business analyst. That's not the fun fact. He shared with me that he is a first generation French Canadian So maybe we can even get him to speak a little French. I'm not sure. I'm kind of putting him on the spot here. But so Dorian has been with Saskatchewan Teachers Federation as the corporate business analyst since September of 2017. And he has extensive background working with cost benefit analysis in cloud technology and just helping businesses in general evolve. So he has been really instrumental since STF joined the Passageways OnBoard family in really getting this off the ground. And so really excited to have him on here. You know, this is just a little bit of a plug here for OnBoard. Of course, we want to ensure that OnBoard is helping enable all of you to have better meetings and turn meetings into more strategic sessions and less operational. With that being said, Dorian, anything else that you want to share a little bit about yourself, or if you could maybe tell the audience just a little bit of background about Saskatchewan Teachers Federation. I did a little research myself, and very large K-12, obviously education focused group with over what, 13,000 teachers, I think I saw.
Yeah, you got it. And it's been around for like 80 years. And, you know, it's always kind of been adapting to the times. Funny enough, like my hiring, it was part of like a massive kind of culture shift at that place. So in the last few years, they brought on a chief financial officer, a chief investment officer, a chief operating officer, kind of because maybe just prior to 5 years ago, the STF kind of existed as a place that was for teachers, but it was also run by teachers. So the pension specialist, the chief, I guess the manager of finance at the time, these were all actually teachers. And what they noticed was that not a lot of stuff was cost efficient. A lot of decisions were made kind of not to best practice standards. So it's been a massive change where they bring in some in-house specialties, and part of my specialty was to bring about basically a way to move agile and a way to move towards cloud kind of technologies, and they needed a way to prove it mathematically and algebraically, and that was my specialty. And it's one of those things, like we keep changing, we keep evolving, and this was actually Passageways was OnBoard by Passageways was one of our biggest wins in the last, I guess, 2 fiscal years. So it's like, I'll talk about it later. You'll see all the stats for yourself. So
yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Dorian. And so, you know, some of the things here on the screen just to kind of tease out, you know, we hope that for all of you that are using OnBoard, you're seeing these types of outcomes listed, right? Incredible, hopefully time savings in preparation, in man hours, just improved overall preparation for meetings, leading to, as a result, improved board meetings. And of course, we want OnBoard to be easy to use. We've built it with that in mind. And so those are kind of the 4 kind of key topics on this particular slide. And what I've asked Dorian to do is kind of use some of these notes as talking points around each of the things. So with respect to incredible time savings, right, Dorian, so you guys were doing, can you just speak a little bit about what the process was before?
So,
yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, like I call it's a pretty like archaic process. Like I hadn't actually seen something done like this since, man, maybe I was in elementary, middle school. So funny enough, like what they would do is you'd have an administrator, an admin assistant who would type out an agenda. Somebody else would peer review it. Then somebody would put together all the documents in usually just a standard folder like you would find on a computer, print out all said documents. And then I always joke, like, you keep your fingers crossed that there's no reprints, there's no errors, because if there are, you have to reprint all of them again. And if it's somebody that's internal to the STF, you just walk it over to their desk. And if it's somebody external to the STF, well, then we fire it over by Purelator so that it gets there on time. And I guess fingers crossed that we don't have terrible weather like we did last week where everything was delayed. So Yeah, on average, that took about an entire business day to complete, start to finish, and it's a long and tedious process that I'm happy to say like we have completely gotten rid of. So,
yeah. Thank you. And I want to just kind of tease out, and I'm going to guess with many of you on the phone or, listening and watching today, if you were in that paper environment before you came to OnBoard, you can probably relate, maybe not to that extreme, but certainly it has an impact on all groups, in some form or fashion with some savings. So I do want to, again, just kind of tease out, we're in the process, in addition to Dorian being willing to share today during this session, we're putting together a kind of a success story that we'll make sure that gets shared out with you when it's ready and available. And it includes some really great visualizations around their return on investment. So just a little plug for that. So Dorian, you already mentioned, in some respects, how OnBoard has helped improve that preparation, right? So just eliminating all of those steps, the paper aspect, moving everything electronically, not having to worry about lost documentation in the mail, and reprints. So do you know though, Dorian, have you had to do like last minute additions to the meeting, and has OnBoard helped with that?
Oh, absolutely. So for one of our newest committees, this an investment trust committee, we had to bring on people from all across Canada. And some of these guys forget, to put something into the meeting when they're just kind of put on the spot, but then they remember, and then it's just a matter of, just moving something from the computer into OnBoard, and then in seconds, everyone's got it. It's synced across the cloud, and it saves us. It's a huge win.
Good. And I want to make sure too, for any of you guys that are listening, please do, I'll need to keep an eye on the chat feature. Feel free to either unmute yourself, or if we need to do that, you can kind of raise your hand. If for some reason it's not letting you unmute yourself. If you have a question, you can also put it in the chat tool. So we'll, I want to make sure that this is interactive. And while Dorian and I have had the pleasure of speaking a couple different times leading up to this, it's your questions and the value that I want you guys to get out of hearing directly from Dorian. So feel free to put questions in here as well in the chat. So then I'm kind of moving on to talk about like the board meetings itself. And you guys have members with all different kinds of devices, and we'll talk a little bit more on the next slide maybe about that. Is there anything else here around, we talked about the emergency changes, having access from any device. Any comments or feedback, Dorian, that you may have heard directly from board members?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things now is like internally, it kind of ties back in even with like the first point that we made. Whenever somebody had to start up a committee, they had to go through like a bureaucratic process where we then had to go get the binders, put in like the special labeling so that, everybody knew it was per this committee. But now I'm able to grant access to somebody that says, hey, I've got this committee I want to bring up and I wanted to spin it up really quick. So it's just a matter of making them an administrator. They set who they want to be in the committee, and we can do that in seconds. So we go from days to seconds, and
awesome. Yeah. Well, and one of the things as we work with new groups is not only like equipping you, and I know while you had a huge hand in getting everything set up and making the pitch and establishing, the metrics to be able to show the value so that you could extend to other groups. I know I don't want to not give a shout out to others like Jen Douglas there with Saskatchewan Teachers Federation that also, continues, right, to play a role as well. So it's a team effort, I know, on your end as well. Mm-hmm. And so all of these things that we've talked about thus far kind of led to, Dorian taking the charge to really show that OnBoard is providing a return on investment that demonstrated it would make sense to expand out to other groups. So I've just kind of touched on this briefly because we're going to talk about it more in the success story that's coming. But just, you know, in Q4, so in December last year, right, Dorian reached out, we were able to add 45 more users, and you're currently in the process of getting all of those groups set up and people invited, correct?
That is correct, yeah.
Yeah, good. So I'm going to go ahead and flip over here then to the next screen, and we'll just take a look too and make sure if we have any questions coming in. Let's see, we covered some of these things, Dorian, the shipping costs, the material savings from paper and binders, as well as these indirect benefits. Is there anything in here in that list of indirect benefits that you'd like to expand upon, maybe that we haven't talked about? I'm looking through.
No, I mean, like those are all kind of the benefits I had identified. I mean, I can go into detail for each one, but I mean, we don't have enough time. But,
yeah, that's okay.
Really, like the biggest thing is the material savings. That's a no-brainer. That's the one that, you know, everyone's going to see as a hard benefit. And then it's the soft benefits that time. You know, time is one of those things that's always hard to calculate, but you know, I can say that we've, you know, safely regained quite a bit of time. I mean, up to December, I think I had calculated 134 working hours across the administrators. That's just across administrators, it's not even across like board members per se. Right.
And I think we all, you know, boards are various kind of shapes and sizes, if you will. In terms of, you know, I worked with a group recently where they have a board that actually pays to be a board member. Some are, you know, volunteer, some are elected. So it's nice that, you know, OnBoard can serve all of these different groups. And I don't think anybody would argue with getting time back to their day. So if you're a board member and you're traveling to fulfill, you know, duties and responsibilities as a board member, and you can, you know, save time in preparation ahead of time or even have shorter meetings, that's what we definitely hope for as well.
Yeah.
So Dorian, you know, a lot of new groups that I work with, they are thinking very carefully and thoughtfully, and I try to advise them on this as much as possible. You know, how is the board going to be receptive? You know, are they hesitant about their board? Can you speak to kind of what you observed with bringing on, you know, board members and external individuals, and the type of support and training that they need or didn't need?
Oh yeah, sure. So for one of the committees, everyone was pretty well versed in electronic solutions, just because that was kind of originally why we had to bring it in, was all these ladies and gentlemen that you know, had, you know, a ton of experience in digital solutions. So we had to kind of adapt our own ways to thinking. So for them, it was quite easy, and it was actually kind of like exciting internally because we had to make this change. But then there was another committee that had been doing kind of like the legacy approach with the paper binders and everything. And they couldn't be happier to change, because I had a couple people already say like, oh, you know, Dorian, you know, there's been a couple times where somebody sends me documents and it's, you know, it's the right package, but it got damaged in the mail, or Dorian, I didn't even show up. And then I had to get somebody to come quickly give it to me when I got here and then review it 15 minutes before the meeting. And so, you know, with something like that, this was already like turning into be like we were gaining a lot of momentum. So then we had to kind of like think about how we were going to kind of train those who are going to be administering the meetings and those who would be kind of, you know, being a part of the meetings. That'd be part of the books and kind of partaking in the board software. And so when I thought about it, I said, well, the most important thing is to first get our administrators trained. And so what I do is I first kind of show them the software, the kind of ins and outs of it. It's really not busy, and I mean that like in a good way. Like it's really simple. The user interface is really, really easy to understand and really easy to learn. It really mimics a lot of SharePoint. So if there's any SharePoint people out there, you'll see a lot of familiarities with it. It's a very modern interface. We love the software as a service kind of platform, and to be able to explain to people like your features. If you don't see a feature here, we can probably backlog it and send it over to Passageways, and they'll put it in their repertoire, and it might come in the future or not.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry, back to the actual training itself.
No, it's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. It was as easy. I always say it takes 30 minutes, but realistically, that was kind of like my longest session, and that was just somebody who had a lot of questions. But our tech savvy people took no longer than 10 minutes. It was just a matter of showing them the privileges, bringing people in and out of the committees or groups, and then showing them how to execute a meeting. And kind of like really kind of internally, we had just really kind of funny debates on, do we set members as readers or contributors? And so that was funny. That actually took more time than actually training people. So
okay.
On the
That's
admin side,
yeah, that's a good tip for me too.
Yeah.
Permission is probably one of the things that I think we try to stress the most, especially not for the people that are just going to be viewers and readers of the information, but those who might need to actually participate in uploading materials, and the difference between, contributor, like you said, and administrator. So I'm happy to hear though that, even though you dedicate the time that most of your users are, getting on board, if you will, with relative ease, and not a lot of true like training, more like navigation orienting them.
Yeah. And then, I mean, for the actual members of the meeting, so anyone that's not an administrator, realistically, there's not that much to show them. It's your common resource folder, but really it's about the meetings. It's opening that book, showing them like, hey, like, I see that you doodle on your piece of paper here. If you're doodling notes there, this is how you doodle notes in here. And we can, if you want it shared, you can share it. If you want it, unique to you, it's unique to you. No one can see it. And that was like a really big thing. And so somebody yesterday, we got a new person at the STF, and I showed him how to use it. And, it took 5 minutes. I just had a demo meeting that I just showed him. He's like, okay, so if I want to write on this, I just write here. I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay, do I have to bring my STF laptop? It's kind of old, it's kind of clunky. Can I just bring my iPad? And I was like, yeah, bring your iPad.
Good. That's great. Hey, we have a couple of questions, Dorian, if you don't mind. And
sure.
Melody is asking if either of us, or if you have any suggestions for those who are anti-portal. So, I think it's common that I hear anyway that there's usually one or two that do feel like they've just got to print. What have you done with those? Have some groups just say no, they disable it? To be honest, Melody, I'll just go that you can do a hard and fast, like we're turning it off. And I have a few brave people that have done that. But Dorian, what have you encountered?
Okay, so I'll give you the ultimate professional kind of approach to this, and the reason why I kind of approach it like this. If you're going to, there's always going to be those people that resist kind of change, like the type of business evolution. And you know what? I always say you're free to do whatever you want. Absolutely. If you don't want to be one kind of with how the business is evolving, then that's fantastic. That's your responsibility. And so the kind of when I sat down with all the administrators, I said, you're going to have people that are going to tell you like, hey, I still need you to print this out for me. And I said, at your next meeting, you say, when we're switching to OnBoard, we're switching to OnBoard. Dorian's got all the setup and all the processes done. But this is the last time I'm going to, we as admin assistants are going to print out anything. And it's actually now an STF mandate that no admin assistants are to print any documents. And so then I say to the people who still want to print it out, here's the exact step-by-step process on how to print it out. And then there you go. And then it's up to them. So they want to have that responsibility to resist the change. That's great. But they can also have that responsibility to then print out the papers themselves. It's no hard feelings. It's just business, as I say. So
yeah, well, and sometimes if you can get buy-in to have that type of a mandate, I think you may be in better shape than others, Dorian. So that's a good example of the path that you guys decided to take. I know Melody was saying that she would turn it off, but she's not. So my suggestion isn't always the one that can be used in terms of turning off that global setting for downloading. So maybe an approach more like what Dorian's just suggested, Melody, would help. And
yeah,
then,
I would always suggest get executive buy-in. Try your hardest to force kind of like an organization-wide process, or I guess business rule, and then that way you kind of got your ducks in a row for long-term success and basically reduce responsibility. You're focusing on the new platform, really not on archaic styles of doing things, if that makes sense.
okay. Yeah, thank you. And then Hugh from Hawaii, University of Hawaii, I saw that you had, I wasn't sure if it was a question. Hugh, can we unmute Hugh? So Hugh was saying something about sending communications regularly. They actually took more of an approach of, first rolling it out with a committee and then the executive committee and then the full board. So, and many groups do that. Some go directly with the board. So Hugh, we're going to see, if you have a mic, I think.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Aloha, Jenny.
Hi, aloha.
So yeah, we have a very large board. We have 31 trustees on our board. So when we rolled this out, we rolled it out to one committee first, to our investment committee, because we thought they might have more sophistication with sort of online technology. And then we did it with another committee, and then we took it to the executive committee. And the process, I think, was a lot smoother, and because we just kind of built momentum and sort of made those committees our ambassadors for the rest of the board.
Yeah, I think that's good. And then that's approach that a lot of groups that I work with, Hugh, that, like what we talked about in terms of your rollout to build that momentum, get some early champions, people that might not officially or formally mentor others, but might be willing to help out, in a meeting setting or not in a meeting setting. So that's been working well.
Yeah, and like any other large board, we had one or two people that were sort of anti-adopters, and we just hit them with a lot of friendly customer service emails saying we're going to have open hours to take your call and walk you through the process, and just sort of kill them with kindness.
Good. I like that. I love that. Thanks, Hugh, for sharing that. Any other last kind of comments, questions for Dorian? I want to thank him so much for being on. We do have another speaker, Sandy, that's going to be coming up here next, hosted by Brian Martin here, one of the other success managers. So thank you guys so much for your questions. Keep them coming as we move over to add Sandy. Thank you so much, Dorian. Any last thoughts or anything you want to share? Appreciate your time.
Oh, no. I didn't know what that was there, that random doorbell ring. No,
Yeah.
I have no comments other than, we love the product. We're looking to expand it on all, and we're always looking to get more use out of it and expand upon the features that we currently don't use, and we've got plans to use them in the future. So.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah, Dorian, we're going to be adding in the voting for some of these new groups coming on. So I'll look forward to working with you on that. And I'm sure you're able to do it, but obviously, I'm here to help if you need anything from me. All right. So thanks, Dorian. And we're going to move down into, I think, our next set of slides.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to require everybody's cooperation on this next part. We had an interesting little technical difficulty that we've encountered. Several of you are showing up in the registered as Jenny Washington. Apparently some of the links that we sent out were all cloned. The complicated part of that is my next presenter, Sandy, is registered to the webinar as Jenny Washington. So I wasn't sure which one to unmute. So I've unmuted actually about 4 or 5 of you. So if you happen to be Sandy, say hi.
Hi.
Hey! Now, for all of you that are not Sandy, if you would mute yourself to better facilitate so we don't have any background noise, I would very much appreciate it. And Sandy, stay, just keep saying hi, and we'll make sure that you're still logged on, and we can proceed accordingly.
I am still here.
Yay.
Excellent. Okay, so I want to thank everybody's patience for that. We weren't sure how that was going to work, but with your cooperation, we were able to proceed. So Sandy is a corporate secretary with Forward Bank. Sandy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're speaking on today?
My name is Sandy. I am the corporate secretary. I've been working for Forward Bank for about 12 years. I've been their corporate secretary for about 7. We are a community bank in central Wisconsin. We are a $455 million bank. We have 125 employees, 7 locations. We are going through an acquisition right now, so we will acquire 2 more locations, as well as look for another director. At this point, we have 8 directors on using the application already, and honestly, I didn't have much feedback. It was, this is the way we're going to do it, and just the way it is. And so I really was interested with Dorian's, where he was saying that there was a couple that was, you know, kind of resisting the effect, and I'm like, our directors were on board, and we do have a few older ones, but they were willing to transition. So it has been a very nice tool, and I keep trying to make new recommendations. Brian and I talk often enough, and trying to make sure that everything works as well as the directors would like. So we are actually going to talk about board assessments and how we do things around here.
Excellent. So Sandy, why don't you give us a little background on, first of all, what a board assessment is, and what you hope to achieve to it, and what you used, kind of how you did that even before you were using OnBoard. From the conversations we had, I know you had been doing these for years, even before the implementation of OnBoard inside the organization.
So in the past, so the assessments, they're just good because it's a good communication. It's just to determine board governance. And as you can see on the screen here, thing made up by board management, the packet, how the material is being distributed, the size of the board, is it adequate? Are there more committees needed? Are existing functioning to all the levels? So different aspects that we look at. It identifies gaps and what's needed for your organization. Years ago, we wouldn't have looked for someone with IT experience or ag experience. As the banking evolves, overall we just look at the area risks. So these evaluations or these assessments pull all that information out and then gives us something to look for. So it shows that if we're successful, its answers, do each of the board members add value? Do they understand what's expected? And are we doing what needs to be done? So we had originally, about 5 years before that, probably about 6 years ago, we had a strategic planning session. So we do those every year. And this came out of our strategic planning, and it became an initiative to perform actual annual assessments. And so in the past, they were done manually. So they were paper and pen. I gave them the questions. They had to write them out. They gave them back. I had to type them up. I put them into a document, and I combined all their answers because everything's anonymous. So it was a large manual process, and it was a struggle. But we got a lot of good information out of it. Since then, I used a different product so that I did it online. But again, it wasn't as user-friendly on the admin side. And just this past year, I actually put it into OnBoard into our survey function, and it worked really slick. It's on their iPad, so all of our directors use the iPads now, and they were able to complete the assessment. So I have them all numbered, strongly disagree to strongly agree. And there's also some open-ended questions where I actually ask for feedback rather than just clicking a box. So in the end this year, I am able to pull a report. It's all into one package, something that took me half a day, if not a day, to combine all those old packets where they were all paper. This took me half an hour to create the report, review everything, and send it off. So it saved me a lot of time. The survey feature is fantastic. So I just want to see what else I can use for it. For the assessments itself, some things that we achieved, we do these annually before our compensation committee, and they meet once a year to determine compensation. So each director actually evaluates their own performance, as well as giving opportunity for feedback on the other directors' performances. And they also give me ideas or ways to improve the board packet. Regulations continue to increase, and it just causes information overload. So they give me feedback on, this was a long report, or how can we make this different? They also determine if the communication between the board and management is good. So I have questions out there. This will give them an opportune time to, whether they need to increase, management needs to come in and they need to talk more about something, or maybe the directors just don't understand what's happening into the bank. I also give them opportune times to look at my duties. Am I performing to their expectations? We also look at ways of training and giving them topics. So that's kind of an open-ended question where I ask them, what are some things that you want to learn in 2019? And then I create those, and I gather presenters that can train them on the things that they want to learn. And then they also have an opportunity, some questions are out there for OnBoard itself. So are they experiencing any issues or asking for any improvements? So things that came out of those after the last 5, 7, and 6 years, we've actually changed our board packet format. We never used to have, because like everybody's board packet, I'm sure, just keeps getting bigger and bigger with the regulations. They're requiring to see everything. So we actually created a consent agenda where we have things that are lumped into one lump page, and it's a mass approval rather than each individual item that they have to talk about. And so it has reduced our time in the board meetings. So rather than discuss everything and spend an hour, now it's, unless they have questions, we're done in 5-10 minutes in that section. And it's just given us more time to strategically talk about how we want to move our bank forward. We have found the communication is lacked in some areas. So what we have created is some departments are actually coming into, department leads are coming in to talk in front of the directors so that the directors are understanding what's happening inside our bank. Training topics are identified, which we talked about, and then training is provided every quarter. We are more focused on director succession. That's one of the other things that came out of there, is that they are, we've kind of narrowed down the expertise and the skills that we want looking for a director, and now we're more select on who we hire and who we nominate. So we are, with the acquisition that's coming and we're looking for another director, this has given us, we are more focused on who we're going to ask rather than just another business owner that's requesting. We want to be more specific on the risks that we have and who we want to lead our bank. With the vast knowledge we continue to give our board, we actually increase their compensation. They're just not a figurehead in our bank, they are actually working for pay. So based upon their responses in the assessments, it will base on their increases for the year.
Wow.
Very good.
We created a board orientation for incoming directors, and we found ones that had no banking experience. There was that gap, and this really helped them to understand the culture and mission. And then we also found that our directors work together and the team dynamics are shown. It's interesting because they do these individually, and their open-ended questions are the same. So you've got multiple directors that are saying the same things, even though they're doing them separately. So it shows that they are they're on the same page with our mission in making our bank the best that it can be. And then, as always, there are action items at every summary. So we just we completed in January, and out of that assessment, I break it down into actionable items. And there are actionable items that I am working on for 2019. So all in all, assessments are fantastic. It's a good communication piece between management and the board, from the board to the board, from me to the board. It's just a good tool that I highly recommend any bank or financial institution to implement if you don't already.
Excellent. Sandy, I think that you had some really good points there. I appreciate you sharing so much. I'm curious. Now, obviously, you mentioned that these assessment surveys are used to kind of determine board compensation, things like that. Have you ever done these surveys anonymously, or got, tabulated the results and made that private, or is it always you want to know what each individual board member has to say? I'm wondering if there's a use there for a way to keep things confidential and share concerns that the board may have that they might not necessarily be comfortable sharing openly. Is that something you've ever experimented with, or what are your thoughts on that?
Our directors, I think, are a little bit different than other places that I've heard, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but our directors are not, they're very honest. So these assessments that are coming out are not all peaches and cream. They tell me how it is, but they also know that I am loyal, I am honest to the point that if they tell me something, it won't go past them unless they want me to know. But we also have an open agreement that whatever is out there will be shared. It's just that, like, the summaries that I send to the directors, so once it's all done, I remove all names.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think that, Cindy, I was thinking that same question, and this is Jenny, and I think what I heard a lot is it's one thing to do an assessment, it's another to like make it actionable, right? So using those insights to take action. And that's where I think from what I've heard, you've built trust, and you also have a culture of transparency. And so that is a great recipe for success, right? Because they know that the information that you're gathering is going to be used to potentially transform things or provide additional training. And so I really commend you and the bank for taking it to that level, because I think there are some groups that don't do the board assessments, which is why we're so fortunate to have you sharing this, just to really raise awareness and the importance of doing these assessments, but doing them thoughtfully with a plan of how to use the information. So I don't know that we have something where attendees can raise their hand, but if you guys are listening still, and I thank you guys for being here and participating, I would love to know if you could type in the chat if you're doing a board assessment or not annually. So for those who are attending, I would love to be able to just kind of poll, if you will, kind of informally. So if you're not, if you're not and you want to work with your customer success manager, or if you're in implementation with me, we can help. We've got examples from groups that have allowed us to share so thanks if you have a second to participate and want to see examples and want us to work with you. We'll definitely reach out to you afterwards. So Sandy, I wanted to ask you who, when you started shifting from the paper to OnBoard, did you review the questions again? So what kind of process did you have to build out the various questions for the survey?
So when it was paper, I started out with minimal questions. I think there was like 10, maybe 12. So it was very broad. Mm-hmm. And once I moved, and so I used a different program that did not complete it was just harder to insert. So it was hard to get the reports back. So then when I used OnBoard, I kind of looked at questions and wanted to really specifically like narrow down some questions. Now granted, I did have a couple of the directors said, well, a couple of these questions are kind of similar, so I'm going to have to look at them again for 2020 and just kind of maybe not make them so minuscule. Mm-hmm. You do have to look at them every year. I mean, you can't just go from one to every year. I think for every year that we've had them, they're not the same. Now granted, the ratings are pretty much the same, so I should be able to go back 5 years and that somewhat of that same question is still out there. Are we improving on that? Are we decreasing on that? And I have found in the last couple of years, one of the questions continues to be an issue. And we brought that up at the board meeting in January. I'm like, this has been an issue in the past, and I said, it's still an issue, and how are we going to solve it? So, and I think that's one of the things you have to look at is if you are going to change the questions, but you want to have like a record to see if you're improving or not, you almost have to keep somewhat of the same questions. You can add a couple more, remove some, but you want to try and keep them as similar.
Exactly. Yeah. Coming from higher ed, having spent 11 years working with faculty and teaching assistants and students, I can definitely resonates with me. You want to make sure you're asking thoughtful questions, but you want to make them the same enough that you can see trends, right? You don't want to start just going crazy and changing things, and be really thoughtful about it. And it's great that you kind of advocate, you use the information, you take that information, you advocate for the members for change. Mm-hmm. And so just so that you know, Sandy, because I know you've been chatting, we're in the chat when I asked that question. I'm not surprised, and yet I am, that many groups are saying no, they're not doing assessments. And for those of you that answered no, this is a great time if you have a question for Sandy, if you're thinking about doing it or running into problems. If you don't mind, I'm gonna.
I'm totally fine. And one of the things, and I think initially way back when, and I don't think it was board assessments, even employee surveys, if you're not comfortable or the directors are not comfortable with whoever would be managing this, then find our local UW, so our local college, their business classes. Give it to them so that they create the questions. Or not necessarily create the questions, but they send out the survey so that at least you're getting an assessment done.
Yeah.
And it would be anonymous. Now, again, like you said, we're more transparent here. And once through the surveys in OnBoard, once you pull the report, it does have all the directors. It has their names, what they've chosen. I remove all of that. So there is not one name on that form. So all their questions are just kind of tabulated together, and all their open-ended questions they're scrambled. So it's not, nobody knows what each person said. Now, the one time that we had the same issue, I'm like, you know, can anybody help with this? How are we going to solve this? You know, I believe that person spoke up and said, you know, this is what I think we should do. So, you know, and it's not going to happen with every organization, but, you know, you're hoping that they are working with you to make your bank better. I mean, it's not done to be
Right.
a punishment. I mean, it's to improve your bank. It's to make things better, make sure that communication is flowing from the top to the bottom, you know, and making sure that you're all on the same page.
Yeah, both ways, right? I mean, there's accountability on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's good, and maybe something that creates a little bit of fear, and we needed that reminder. So thanks for sharing that perspective, Sandy. I don't see any very specific questions. Sandy, you know, Brian or I might reach out to you if there are questions that you might be willing to help us out with and help others. Would love to take, you know, advantage in a friendly way.
We have some questions on the screen.
Yes.
Sandy was nice enough to share a blank copy of her board portal. We shared a bunch of questions here on the screen, but her survey consists of 49 questions. If you'd like, if she's comfortable and whatnot, I'm willing to share some more of those. If she's willing to share that out with others. Here's a question from Karen. Can the survey assessment run a comparison report of several years?
Hey, oh yeah. Hi, Karen.
So that's an excellent question, and not at this time. Right now, each survey that within OnBoard is polled individually, and the results are exported individually. Now, one of the ways you can export those is as an Excel file. So with a little bit of Excel magic, you could use that to create a comparison and a trend over year.
Mm-hmm.
Sandy, how do you, obviously this is your first year using OnBoard for the surveys you shared, but tell me in the past, how did you compare your results year over year?
Unfortunately, it's a manual process because of the way I had to pull reports, and it's just manual. So now I look at the previous years, and I looked at this year's to see where we were in relation. Now again, we've only used, you know, probably over 40 questions probably in the last 3 years. So now that this has been into OnBoard and I can actually pull those reports, it'll be really nice to put it into Excel, and going forward, that's probably where it's going to stay unless OnBoard decides to do something different. But it'll go a lot easier in 2020 to do a comparison of the years past.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, so definitely Brian's on the right track with Excel, you know, the fact that you can have the Excel output. And this also goes back to Sandy, what we were talking about with try not to change your questions too much year over year, or keep them, maybe you tweak the wording, but the, you know, the outcome is the same, so you can measure over time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that answers all the questions that we had for you, Sandy. I want to thank you for your time. We are getting near the tail end of our webinar, so I want to just take a moment to introduce one of our newest Pathfinders. Gina's in the room with us here. Gina, if you would like to say hi and tell everybody about yourself and what your role is here.
Hello, everyone. Again, this is Gina Guy. I am a customer implementation manager, and I recently began work here at Passageways. I'm thrilled to be on the Passageways and Pathfinders team, and I'm here to help you with all of your needs as we proceed forward. And I'm excited to learn from our customers today just as much as what you are learning. So welcome.
We have a couple of new Pathfinders as well, brand new Pathfinders, Adam and Janet. Now I am going to try and see if I can do some internet magic here and see if they're still on the call with us. Janet is working out of a remote office today, and Adam had some travel he had to go to. Ooh, there's Janet. All right, so I'm gonna hit a button here to allow Janet to talk. Say hello, Janet.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Well, hi. Good to meet everyone. Happy to be with Passageways as a customer advocacy manager, and I'm going to be working with your CSMs to, understand how we can help you be more successful in your partnership with us. And I look forward to bringing you more programs and channels to partner with us and share best practices with each other. So watch for more to come in the coming months.
Awesome. Thanks, Janet. And I don't know, Adam's here in the office with us today, probably busy working with some of you that might need to expand out to additional users or, even upgrade your package. So that's Adam's primary role, is helping you with growth and onboard growing with you as you have success and you want to extend that out. Just like as what Dorian said, earlier with their story, they added 60 some users and they're going to be extending out to additional groups here in 2019. So that's Adam and Janet. And so we're so excited to continue to grow and be able to bring you these sessions. We are looking to do some other things besides these hour-long webinars because we know everybody's time is valuable. So maybe we'll be asking you for some more feedback over email. Or if you want to chat really quickly, I know we're at the end of our time. We're thinking about doing some what we're kind of calling coffee hour sessions. So maybe shorter, 20-minute, theme-based with feedback from you on topics, maybe even more regularly. So if you think that that's something that you might be interested in, doing things more regularly with OnBoard that are topic specific, please let us know. Hit us up in the chat. This is just a good opportunity for us to get some feedback from you if you have some for us, whether it be the types of topics or just yay or nay on this type of a concept.
Our next full webinar, we're organizing the month, March 12th at 2 o'clock. Our coffee hours, we're hoping to have a little more often than that. Those will be shorter, I think, but we're shooting for about a half hour for those. And those are generally, we want to be user-driven content. So you guys, your conversations, your stories, your best use case scenarios, we want you to have those conversations. If you think you have a topic for the coffee hours, or you would like to share a success story for yourself, your team, you're proud of something you've achieved with OnBoard, we want to hear from you, and we want you to be part of these conversations as well. So that's our goal for the new year.
Oh, I'm sorry, Brian. I just wanted one thing. We are so excited for March's webinar, and we are still looking for our topic. Some things that we are looking for that I would be really, I think all of us would be so excited to have you help us with. If you have new board members that have joined you since you've been with OnBoard that would love to talk to us and to attendees from their perspective as a board member, please let me know or let us know. You can email obpros@passageways.com. That'll come to our entire customer success team. I've met with some really great groups recently doing some director training to enable them for their use. And we've got some really excited board members that I know are out there that I think we can get to talk about from their perspective. How did it help them to, as maybe a new member, get oriented to your organization, be able to have quick access to materials by just being a member of OnBoard and being able to quickly see those past board meeting packets and reports, all of those types of things. Even users that felt like they would label themselves as technology challenged have surprised me and come forward to be champions and really promote OnBoard within their group. So please, 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 if you have any board members that you think would be willing to chat with us, would love to have that perspective for you as admins, and then we could perhaps get some other board member attendance. So thank you so much. Yep. We are going to get the recording put together and out within a couple of days. So we'll get that sent over to you, and please share that within your groups.
All right, everybody, want to thank you for attending our February offshore with OnBoard, and we look forward to talking to you and seeing with you again with our upcoming coffee hours and next month's webinar.
All right.
We're gonna let you go. Enjoy the rest of your day. You be safe out there.